Louie T. Welcome to Thursday Night Football Overtime. Colts, Titans, AFC South family business. You know how the family do it. Man, this was a big game, and I talked about this on the podcast, and I said I felt like the Colts could go into Tennessee and win. And for the first time this year, I've bragged about a team. I told you that a team was going to show you something on a primetime stage, and they actually delivered. Because earlier this season, I said, man, you guys haven't been watching Jacksonville. They got an impressive rookie in James Robinson. Gardner Minshew and his offense is dangerous. And then DJ Chark doesn't play, and the offense looked like trash, and they get dominated by the Dolphins. And I talked about a couple of other teams that were going to be on a primetime stage. And I'm like, you're going to get to see Carolina. I was talking about Carolina. Man, this Panthers team is a lot better than you guys think. You haven't been watching. I know you see that they're 3-2, and then they're 3-3. And they got a chance to get back over 500 against these Falcons. And then they come on Thursday night and they lay an egg. I told anybody that would listen, I talked about it on the podcast. I've been talking about them all season long. I said, when Phillip Rivers doesn't turn the football over, this Colts team, extremely dangerous. They've got weapons on offense. And the beauty of it is, they're in the past, if T.Y. Hilton doesn't play, they don't have anything. That's how it was set up in the past. Now, and look, he's still a big part, as you saw tonight. He changes things. And he didn't play last week, and they were stagnant offensively last week. But it was the Ravens, too. Got to give them credit. But they've got weapons now. You saw Michael Pittman have a career night tonight. Over 100 yards receiving. Had the big run down inside the 5-yard line. I'm the biggest fan of Nyheim Hines. I loved him at NC State when it was him and Jalen Samuels coming out at the same time. I love Nyheim Hines. I thought that he was going to make a hell of a back if he landed in the right hands. And I said, if he's in a New Orleans or New England with Brady or anywhere where they're going to utilize his receiving ability, he's going to be dangerous. And he landed in a really good spot in Indianapolis. This guy's a beast. You saw it tonight. He had a career night as well, did Nyheim Hines, rushing the football. This is a guy that I think is so multifaceted. And I even tweeted out, if I were the Indianapolis Colts, I know this isn't possible, but I would be tempted to never take him off the field. I mean, he looks different as a runner. It looks different in his hands. He makes really good decisions with the football. I thought a couple of those fourth down runs, he might have been able to get something out of them. Now, some of those were blown up immediately. And even one of the fourth down runs that they did get, that they got because of Jonathan Taylor, had that physicality and that forward lean and that second effort, or else he would have got stopped on a fourth down run early in the game. So I just love Nyheim Hines. And could you imagine if Marlon Mack was still healthy, what they'd really have at the running back position this year? Because they didn't want to have to feature Jonathan Taylor this early. He was supposed to be, a change of pace, an extra guy. And, they're having to give him a little bit more, workload than they want to. They're starting to feature and give a little bit more love to the kid from Ole Miss, who I really like. I thought he did some questionable things tonight, including stopping on a slant on a third down because he didn't want contact. Easier said than done. He was going to get blown up, and he knew it. And he decided, business decision, not going to do that. So didn't love that about what he did, but I like him as a football player as well. Mo Alley Cox, they didn't have Jack Doyle tonight, but they've got so many guys. Zach Pascal, Monarch, stand up. All right, he was big tonight, made some big third down conversions. And the list goes on and on offensively. What they had, and remember, they still don't have Paris Campbell. They're still waiting for him to come back and actually give them something. So this is an offense that I think if Phillip Rivers can just distribute the football. And Marcus Johnson has been really good. He's been a big play guy for them. If he could just stay away from the turnovers, they're a dangerous team because defensively, and that's the thing that I wanted you guys to see tonight. And I told you guys on the podcast, which is why I told you I was picking the Colts. This is a defense that is serious. And I've said Matt Eberflus, to me, going to end up getting a head coaching job in this league at some point. It wouldn't shock me if it's this offseason. This defense has been good for the last 3 years or so. Since he's taken over, I think it's 2.5 years or so. Since he's taken over, this defense has been really good, and they're taking it to the next level. And I talked about Grover Stewart. And I said, man, this guy's really good. I don't think a lot of you know who Grover Stewart is. I mentioned Stewart. I mentioned Bobby Okereke. I mentioned Darius Leonard, obviously. I mentioned DeForest Buckner, who they traded for. I'm a Moore guy. Didn't see a ton of him tonight. And I told you the rookie out of Utah, Blackman, is a stud. And he looks the part of a guy that's going to be a hell of a safety in this league. And I said Xavier Rhodes. It's Rhodes closed again back in Indianapolis. I thought he just needed to change the scenery out of Minnesota. They had turned sour on him. Now he's playing exceptional football again. Rock Yassin is playing solid football. A little handsy, but that was his thing coming out of Temple. But when you look at this football team, they're set up to really be able to go deep into the playoffs if they stay away from the turnovers. This is a dangerous team. And when I look at them, when I look at their losses this season, they've lost games when they've turned the football over. There's a common thread and a common denominator in all of their losses. I think about the Cleveland game on the road, had ample opportunities. They turned the football over in that game. You know, you think about the Ravens game, and they kept harping on that turnover by Jonathan Taylor. It was a massive turnover in that game. They were up 7-0. They were driving for more points. The Ravens could get nothing going offensively, and that turnover happened, and it was essentially a 10-point swing, assuming that they were going to come away with the field goal. Maybe they come away with a touchdown on that possession. We don't know what would have happened, but it's a direct touchdown the other way. Chuck Clark scoops and scores from about 64 yards out, and it changed the whole tenor of that ball game. You know, there's also a failed fourth down. And that's one thing I don't necessarily agree with Frank Wright on, is they go for a lot of fourth downs in Indianapolis. They are never scared of a fourth down. And they've never met a fourth down that they didn't like. They were highly successful tonight. Only one time that they failed on fourth down, and that was the one at the half-yard line where they weren't able to get in after the initial touchdown ruling on the Zach Pascal shovel pass or touch pass, essentially. And then they come back out, say short, and they run it once, they don't get in. They run it again, they don't get in, and the Titans get the stop. But they were like 3 or 4 or 4 or 5 in this game on fourth down. And, you know, I'm not the biggest proponent of always going for it on fourth down. There's context to everything. They went for the first fourth down of the game. Like, they didn't punt the entire night until the very end. So they went for it on the very first fourth down of the night. And they weren't bashful, and they didn't ever turn away a fourth down essentially tonight. Like, and they happened to just be in those situations all night long, where it was 4th and 1, 4th and 2, and it was very manageable, and they continued to convert. You got to give them credit for that, but at some point you got to take the points that are there. You know, in that Ravens loss, I thought they should have taken the field goal. You know, it was a 2-score game. Take the field goal. They didn't take the field goal. They ended up losing the game. I believe it was a 2-score game. Might have even been 17-10 still at that time. Might have been. It might have been, because I know the Ravens ultimately. No, it was 21-10. I'm right. It was 21-10. You're down 2 scores. Take the field goal, because they ran the clock out, ran the football down the field, and then kicked the field goal and won 24-10. Anyway, I digress. This is a Colts team that I just really like. And sans for the turnovers with them, they're a dangerous football team. And I've stated that. They lost in week 1 to Jacksonville. Why? Turnovers. Turnovers are always the key. I think they had 2 turnovers in the first quarter of that game against Jacksonville. If they could stay away from the turnovers, they're good enough defensively, they're good enough offensively to beat anybody in this league. Anybody. So I'm on board with this football team if they can stay away. And that's always been the thing about Phillip Rivers in his career, is can he stay away from the turnovers? He'll do it for 3 or 4 weeks at a time, but eventually they're going to come up and bite him in the ass. He almost threw an interception, chucking it deep to Marcus Johnson, ill-advised throw. You got to take the good with the bad with Phillip Rivers. You just do. And he almost pissed away an opportunity at a field goal right before half. Like, every now and again, you get these moments from Phillip where you go, Phillip, what the hell, dude? What are you doing? So, and I don't think you can't change who you are at this point. And we know who Phillip Rivers is at this point of his career. So that's the only thing I'm concerned about with this Colts team is what happens when Phillip decides to throw 2 picks. You know, what happens when, you know, one of your running backs decides to lay it on the carpet. It's hard to overcome that because while this offense is good, it's not a dynamic nor explosive offense. Like T.Y. Hilton isn't lighting it up this year. You know, so they're not a quick strike offense. It was funny because I think I talked about this 2 or 3 weeks ago. I want to say it was the Lions game, so it was 2 weeks ago. Nyheim Hines catches a touchdown on a screen in that game, and it was like a 22-yard screen for a touchdown. It was the first touchdown pass of the season that netted over 20 yards for the Colts. Think about that. We were 9 weeks into the season, and they hadn't had a touchdown pass of 20 yards or longer. Think about that. And I'm not talking about, you know, traveling in the air. I'm just talking about a touchdown scored 20 yards or longer. That goes to show you that this is not a quick strike, explosive, dynamic offense. And it was crazy because in that game they had 2, and Nyheim Hines was responsible for both of them. But they were outstanding tonight, and this was a 3 phases of the game win. You know, this was what they call complementary football. Special teams was outstanding. Defense was outstanding. Offense was outstanding. They controlled time of possession. They dominated, you know, the first half, even though the scoreboard didn't actually show it. They were down 17-13 at half, but they had dominated time of possession. You heard Troy Aikman at halftime say they've run 41 plays. It was ridiculous. And again, the reason they ran so many plays is because they continued to convert on 4th down. They continued to convert on 3rd and 4th down. If they didn't get it on 3rd down, they were going for it on 4th down. If they would have failed on one of those 4th downs, it would have changed the whole game. So it's dicey. It sounds easy, but it's not. They were able to convert tonight for the most part. So kudos to them for dominating in all 3 phases and going on the road and getting a huge victory. And it changes the whole dynamics of that division because now you own the tiebreaker and you got these guys coming to your building in a couple of weeks. You feel really good about where you are. You got the Texans coming up twice. You haven't used any. Now, it's family business, and there's no such thing as a Houston Texans get out of jail free card. But they're struggling this year. If you can sweep them, and the Titans almost lost to that same Texans team at home, they needed overtime to get those boys. It's not going to be easy, but you got the Texans twice. You got the Raiders. Yeah, you got the Packers coming up. Not going to be easy, but you have a chance, if you take care of business, to really put yourself in a good position if you're the Indianapolis Colts. You really do. Meanwhile, if you're the Titans, a few things come to mind in this game early on. I thought one of the biggest turning points of the game was the drop by A.J. Brown. You go right down the field on your first possession. You score a touchdown. Titans come back down and they get a field goal, and you got a chance to really put these boys behind the 8 ball. And, you know, what the Titans ultimately want to do in football games is they want to get a lead. They want to jump out on top of you early and then control the game with Derrick Henry. And if A.J. Brown catches that football, he probably scores because Xavier Rhodes somehow ended up out of bounds by 1.5 yards and was trailing on the play. And if he catches it cleanly and turns on the Jets, I don't know if Xavier Rhodes is able to catch up to him and stop him before he gets to the end zone. Worst case scenario, it's a massive gain, probably inside the Colts 10-yard line. And you're in business with a chance to score another touchdown, jump out on top of them 14-3, and now you got the Colts right where you want them. Instead, he drops that football. You ultimately punt on that possession. And you really never had that opportunity again. You never really had that opportunity again because, as I mentioned, the Colts kind of dominated the first half of this football game. And so they go down, they get a touchdown. They take I believe it was a 10-7 lead. You go back down the field, you get a touchdown and take the lead 14-10. And I think that's what happened. Let me look it up. I got a chance to look it up right here. No, you get a field goal from Stevie Gostowski to make it 10-3. And then they go and get the touchdown to make it 10-10. And so you had an opportunity to really put some game pressure on the Colts early on. And you missed that opportunity. You let that opportunity slip through your fingers. Literally through your fingers. And I thought after that, the game settled down and allowed Indianapolis to get settled in because they got blitzed on that first possession. You moved it right down the field, and you had them on their heels. And so you blitzed them right away. They weren't able to respond with a touchdown. They had to settle for a field goal, and you had another opportunity, boom, to hit them right in the mouth again. And if you hit them again that second time, I think they're going down. Not necessarily for the count, but it's a knockdown, and the referee's counting 8. And they're going to ask the Titans or the Colts, you okay? Come towards me. All right, let's go. But they would have been down. And it would have been interesting to see how they would have handled being down big early. But you left the door slightly ajar. And that's all they needed. They hung in. They knew they were getting the ball after half. And amazingly enough, they go into the half down 17-13. And they come out and they scored 21 unanswered points and win the football game. And the Titans don't score a single point in the second half of this game. And they're dominated. And you could look at the special teams. After getting a momentous stop defensively, you get a first down, so you're no longer on the shadow of your own goal line. And you got a punt now. And your punter comes out and he shanks it. I don't even think that kick went 20, 25 yards. They started at your, right around your 30, 27, somewhere in there. Right, essentially getting the football right back where they gave it to you. And they're in business. They turned that into a touchdown. And then the next possession, so that gives them the lead at 20-17. Then the next possession, you get the punt blocked. That gives them a 27-17 lead. And then Stephen Gostowski misses a field goal. And at some point, Mike Vrabel, I understand that was your teammate with the Patriots. There's a little bit of loyalty there. And in Mike's mind, he's saying Stephen Gostowski came into the season as one of the most accurate kickers in NFL history. Okay? At some point, he's going to break out of this funk. You remember when the Green Bay Packers were this close to cutting ties with Mason Crosby because he was in a funk. He was struggling that one year. And Aaron Rodgers went to management and said, you cannot cut Mason. He's going to get through this. He's been too good for us for too long. We know this guy can kick. You got to hold on to him. They did. And they weathered the storm, but it was a rough storm. It was a rough storm. Mason Crosby was going through it that year. But they held on to him. Mason Crosby hasn't missed a kick this season. And Mason Crosby's another one of those guys, one of the more accurate kickers throughout the life of his career. The guy's like 18 of 18 this year. He hasn't missed a kick. He's made his last 3 or 4 from 50 yards out. He's been automatic this year. In Mike Vrabel's mind, he thinks Stephen Gostowski is going to break out of this funk. And eventually he's going to be automatic again, like he was in New England. We saw this coming at the tail end of his career in New England. He wasn't the same Stephen Gostowski that he had been in the previous decade in his career. Towards the tail end of his career in New England, he started missing kicks. This is a continuation of that. At some point, Mike Vrabel's got to say, all right, dude, you've missed the most kicks in the league this season. We got to move on, man. We're sorry. You know you're my boy. But we got to move on. We can't keep trotting you out there and having you miss impactful kicks. You easily could have lost in week 1 because this guy missed 4 kicks. You did lose the game against the Steelers a few weeks ago because he couldn't hit from 46 yards out, 47 or whatever it was. That would have sent it to overtime and at least given you a chance. Now, he came up clutch for you in the Minnesota game. But at this point, he's missed 8 kicks now. I think it's time for you to start trying out other kickers. Maybe you've already got a guy on your practice squad. If you don't, I think it's time to start trying out some kickers. This is the perfect week. You got a long week, 11 days until your next game. I think it's time for you to start trying out some kickers because this is getting old fast. If you're a Titans fan, you're sick and tired of this. You have to be. And with the brand of football that this team plays, some of these games are going to come down to a Stephen Gostkowski field goal. He's going to have to be able to deliver, or somebody else is going to have to be able to deliver for you. Anyway, big win for the Colts. Tough loss for the Titans. And Derrick Henry was good in this game. You just never were in a position after the early start and the opportunities to jump out ahead. You were never really in a position that you wanted to be to continue to run the football. And, it was funny because on a lot of these drives when Henry would come out of the game because he was tired or he got banged up on that drive where the punt ended up being, I want to say that was the shanked punt, where he comes out after he tried to stiff arm and then he was, they were over there working on his ribs and whatnot. Every drive that he seemed to come out of stalled out. He'd get going, he'd rev it up. He'd start to get some good rushes. He'd come out, and it's like that. The drive would just stall. So he was a huge part of your offense, but it just wasn't enough of him. This probably needed to be, and I was actually disappointed in the Colts rush defense because they had done such a good job of stopping the run this season. I watched them last week against the Ravens, and we know the Ravens can rev it up with the best of them in the run game, and they did a really good job of stopping Lamar. They did a good job. I thought J.K. Dobbins did have a solid game, but they did a really good job of stopping the run for the most part throughout the course of this season. Derrick Henry had a field day, in tonight's game. I don't know if he even had 20 carries. I know he had 18 at one point for $1 and some change. And if they would have been able to continue to go to that well, maybe the outcome of this game is a little bit different. But credit the Indianapolis Colts for really keeping the Titans offense off the field. They dominated time of possession, especially in the first half. They continued to dominate in the second half, and the special teams joined in, and the defense got critical stops when they needed to. That 4th down stop, holding the Titans to a field goal attempt. That holding penalty, that's another turning play in this game. That holding penalty down 27-17. You're on the move again. Henry breaks off another 8-9 yard run, and instead it's a holding penalty. It's now 2nd and 18 instead of 2nd and 2 or 1, and you never really recovered from that. You ultimately have to settle for the field goal, and Gostkowski misses, and that was pretty much all she wrote. At that point, you get the big one to Michael Pittman Jr. inside the 10-yard line or inside the 15, somewhere in there. And a few plays later, Nyheim Hines is in the end zone, or Jacoby Brissett might have actually gotten in on that quarterback sneak. And that was essentially all she wrote. Big win for the Colts. Tough loss for the Titans. Both teams are now 6-3. And we got ourselves a ball game in this division. And this is going to be a fun division to watch down the stretch because the Colts are very capable. The Titans are very capable. So I think this is going to be a fun division to watch moving forward. Let's see. We got a super chat here from Lurtz of Orthanic. Thank you for the super chat, Lurtz of Orthanic. Greatly appreciate you, who writes, folks done slept on Colts hard. That ended tonight. I've been doing my part to try to educate people on the Indianapolis Colts because, again, I love watching good defense. It was a joy watching the 49ers last year, bludgeon people to death. And it's fun watching this Colts defense because unlike the 49ers defense last year that had household names and first-round picks up and down that defensive line and into the secondary, this Colts defense doesn't have any of that. Their best player is Darius Leonard on the defensive side of football, although you could argue it's now DeForest Buckner, who is a first-round pick. But you look around that team, there aren't many first round picks on this football team. I mean, Grover Stewart is not a first round pick. Darius Leonard himself is not a first round pick. He's a second round pick. He plays like a first round pick, but he's a second round pick. You look around at all these other guys, Justin Houston, who's a huge contributor, Danico Autry. None of these guys are first round picks. Bobby Okereke is not a first round pick. Blackman is not a first round pick. But these guys are all really good football players. Willis is not a first round pick. I think he's a third round pick out of Michigan State. Like, there's so much talent on this team, but it's just a product of really good drafting. And, I love your general manager. Ballard is one of my favorites, and they do the whole with the next pick thing every year. And I watch every single one of those episodes religiously because I just love getting into the mind of a guy like Chris Ballard. And what he's done with this football team in a matter of 3 or 4 years has been remarkable. And I remember saying that this was going to be a long process to turn this thing around. I remember your old GM who was trash. It is crazy because he, like 3 years prior, had won the GM of the year. But he was awful. And when he left, he said, this is going to be a long rebuild in Indianapolis. And Chris Ballard came, and like a year later, they were like 12-4, 11-5, and in the playoffs again, with Andrew Luck. So Ballard has done a phenomenal job. He understands what an Indianapolis Colt player looks like. And to me, that is the best compliment you can give a general manager. Is that, like, that's why the Ravens are so good. That's why they draft so well, because they know what a Baltimore Raven looks like on both sides of the football. And I think the Colts have done a really good job of establishing an identity and knowing what a Colt football player looks like. And even when I can't see it, I just trust in Ballard. And even if I don't love the pick, I just say, hey, I trust Chris Ballard. And more times than not, he's right. And you look at the end product, this team is a good football team, especially on the defensive side of the football. Thank you for the super chat, Lurtz of Orthanic. Remember, if you're out there and you want to have your comment read, fastest way to do that is to super chat. The next best way to do it is to use the hashtag LouieTLive to have your comment read. If you don't use the hashtag, I don't know you're addressing the comment to me, thus I will not read it. So if you're out there and you're new to the show, welcome. Make sure you subscribe to the Louie T Network for more great content. Make sure you turn on that notification bell so you don't miss a thing. And also, make sure you hit that like button. All right, show your man Louie T some love. But I really appreciate you guys. Make sure you use the hashtag LouieTLive if you want your comment read on the air. So Captain Spartan writes, I know we just said yesterday we overreact that every defensive coordinator is the worst, but I think seriously that Vrabel needs to give up defensive play calling. He just can't do it. I would have to defer to a Tennessee Titans fan on that one. I watch this Titans football team, and I know they've got more talent than it appears and that they're showing right now. I think they can be a better defensive team than what we saw tonight and what we've seen. Really, like, that's the thing. That's one of the misnomers of this Titans team, is that they're good defensively. They're really not that good on the defensive side of football, despite having talent, which is probably why you made the comment that Vrabel needs to give up the defensive play calling. But, some of it is the players too. You got to hold the players accountable. I'll give you an example. It's 4th and 2. Why is safety Kevin Byard playing 7 yards off? That kind of stuff drives me nuts. It does. What are you looking to accomplish playing 7 yards off on 4th and 2? How are you helping me by doing that? That was the easiest speed out I've seen this season on a 4th down. Little to no contest because he was so damn far off. Like, what are you going to do? That's not coaching. That's a player not having situational awareness. I mean, again, some of it is coaching, absolutely. But some of it is, the players on the football field. You have to hold them accountable. I've long said the biggest problem with the Titans, and they went out and got Jadeveon Clowney, and they went out and got Vic Beasley, and they tried to solve it. And Beasley, they've already cut him. Is they can't get to the quarterback. They can't get to the quarterback. Harold Landry has been a disappointment. I thought he would be a more natural pass rusher in this league and be wreaking havoc. They just don't get to the quarterback enough. Phillip Rivers was way too comfortable tonight. Way too comfortable. But that's been the story of the Titans all season long defensively, is they just don't get to the quarterback. But we can say that about a lot of teams in the league. A lot of teams don't get to the quarterback. Captain Spartan also says, might want to call up his old mentor Romeo as defensive coordinator when he gets let go of in Houston. I know he's 73, but he's probably still has a little football left in him. Well, we know these OG defensive coordinators, they never go old, man. They never spoil. The expiration date on those guys is infinite. And so I talked about that. I want to say I was talking about that on the podcast. Might have been on one of these overtime shows. But, the expiration date on an OG defensive coordinator never, ever goes awry. I mean, we talk about Wade Phillips, who is he's available right now if you need one. Wade Phillips, Jack Del Rio, Romeo Crennel, for years, Dick LeBeau in Pittsburgh and even in Tennessee towards the end of his career. These guys, Vic Fangio just got his first head coaching job, but has been a coordinator forever. These guys never get old, man. Like it never grows old to call up one of these OG defensive coordinators and say, I need help. They'll come in and turn it around for you. But we'll see what happens with the Titans. I think for me, it just comes down to the lack of pass rush. Really, it does. Cody _ says, good game, Lou. These Colts are scary. Scared for the matchup after this week. But we got to focus on beating the Jags first. Yeah, take care of business of what's in front of you first. And then you worry about, the Indianapolis Colts thereafter. Take care of the Jacksonville Jaguars. Don't let them sneak up on you and make it a more competitive game than it needs to be. Do exactly what you did to the 49ers on Thursday night last week. These Colts are definitely scary, man. And again, I can't reiterate this enough. If they don't turn it over, they're a scary group. Because defensively, they can play with anybody. I think they've got enough weapons to spread it around. They're not flashy. But if Phillip Rivers is distributing the football, as we know he is fully capable of doing, as we saw tonight, they're a scary group. They're a really scary group. Captain Spartan says, I know everyone backs up Clowney with his pressure/run game, but eventually you have to sack the quarterback. Literally, he would be the fourth outside linebacker on my Steelers. We're just that deep. I love Jadeveon Clowney. And you're right. He does impact the game in other ways, and that's always been my thing with Clowney, is that you can't measure his production and his impact on the game by just sack numbers because they're not there. But if you watch Jadeveon Clowney, and we saw him make plays tonight, tracking a play from the backside, blowing up a third down or a fourth down run, like that's what Jadeveon Clowney does. He impacts the game in other ways, but as you mentioned, at some point, you do need to actually, even if you're not sacking the quarterback, because I told you the best game I saw Jadeveon Clowney play last year was against the 49ers on a Monday night. He didn't have a ton of sacks in that game, even though he did have some impactful plays, and he did have a sack force fumble in that game. But it was the pressures. It was the tackles for loss. There was a play in this game where he doesn't get the tackle for loss, but it's his instant penetration that leads to the tackle for loss for his teammate. Like, those are the things Jadeveon Clowney does, but he can't be the only guy you're relying on to get pressure. There are other guys up there. Where's Simmons? Where's Jeff Simmons at? Jeffrey Simmons, stand up. Where's Harold Landry? Stand up. Daquan Jones, whomever you think is a guy that can get to, somebody's got to hit home. And it can't just be Jadeveon Clowney that you're turning around and looking. I get it, $13 million. We'd like him to get some pressure. I understand. But there are other guys that need to be helping out too. So, they just got to be better, period. Reese says, I couldn't watch this game, Lou. A storm hit Florida and I lost power for 16 hours. It just came back on in the fourth quarter. Wow. I'm glad you're all right. That on the East Coast, it's been nasty, man. It's been raining here for like 3-4 days straight. They were telling us to be on the lookout for a flood in these parts. So, yeah, man, it's been rough the past few days or so. I'm just glad you're okay. I'm glad you got power back, and hopefully everything remains calm there. You know, I know you told me you love living in Florida. That's why I can't do Florida, man. It's too much nonsense that goes on. Captain Spartan says, continuing on the Titans defense, do you think this game could be the wake-up call and fix that D-line? They traded away Casey for no reason. Get some of those first-round disappointments. Yeah, I wasn't a huge fan of the Jarrell Casey trade, you know, and Casey wasn't happy about it either. And he voiced his, you know, displeasure with them about that. You know, they gave him away for a hot ham and cheese sandwich. I was shocked. They said it was almost as if they wanted to get rid of him at all costs. Like a 7th-round pick for a guy that's been a Pro Bowler in this league, that's been a double-digit sack getter throughout his career? Really? You're just going to give that guy away? How's your interior pressure working these days? Okay. I didn't understand that one. But, okay, fine. That's what you wanted to do. I don't know if they felt like they needed to make more space for Jeffrey Simmons to take over, but there's enough space and opportunity for all these guys to get some run. You don't have to trade away one of your better pass rushers. So, you know, there was already a come to Jesus moment in Tennessee defensively. That's why they released Vic Beasley and Jonathan Joseph. Like, that was supposed to be the message to the rest of the locker room, that we're not happy with what we're getting defensively and that you guys could be next. That was what that was supposed to be. I mean, teams don't generally release 2 players that they signed in the offseason in the middle of a season in which you're 6-2. But, or I think they might have been 5-2 at the time. That was before the Bears game. I think that release came after they lost to Cincinnati. So, generally teams don't do that. But that was supposed to be pop, 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 shots fired. Hope the rest of y'all understand so I don't have to start spraying. I'm going to shoot a couple in the air. Pop, 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 pop. Hopefully y'all understand the severity of the situation now. So that was the wake-up call when they lost to Cincinnati. How many more of these wake-up calls you need? Jonathan says, I am so happy for my Colts getting this win tonight, Louie. However, I was pissed with those soft-ass calls in the first half, shaking my head. Are you talking about the officials or are you talking about play calls? I didn't love some of the calls by the officials. I thought some of the penalties were ticky-tack. But at the end of the day, you were able to overcome those. And that's what good teams do. You know, you overcome. And I thought the penalties were really hurting you in the first half. I mean, one of the Titans' drives was pretty much aided and abetted by Colt penalties. You know, the pass interference I thought was a little bit, you know, it wasn't suspect. He was holding on to the jersey. That was a good call. But there was another penalty down there that I was like, I didn't really like that call. The roughing the passer was a good call. So I don't know if I think that the penalties weren't good calls. It just, you were hurting yourself. But you overcame that and ultimately ran away and hid with this game. Captain Spartan writes, switching to Titans offense / special teams. If Corey Davis can stay healthy, that offense would be lethal. Also, do you think the Titans should completely rehaul their special teams in the offseason? They may have to. I mean, what happened to the days of good old Brett Kern at punter, you know? And Ryan Suckup as your place kicker. Remember those days, Titan fans? When you didn't used to miss field goals and you had a punter that was dropping them inside the 10, inside the 5 routinely? Damn, what happened to those days? I don't know. Anyway, Corey Davis is interesting because I always tell you, somebody's always eyeballing your stuff from afar. So if you want your stuff, you got to lock your stuff up. Lock and key. I'm looking out the side of my eye like, hey, you gonna use that Corey Davis stuff over there? Because if you don't want it, I'd sure like to take a long, hard look at Corey Davis in the offseason. You didn't pick up the 5th-year option, so obviously you're not really sure. He's having a nice season, though, and they may ultimately want him back. And if he wants to be back, if there's a mutual interest there, he may just ultimately decide he wants to stay in Tennessee. But I know as a Washington fan, if they're looking for a veteran wide receiver to play opposite of Terry McLaurin, I'm looking out the corner of my eye like, hey, that's a former first-round pick. Hey, looks pretty damn good to me from over here. Somebody's always eyeballing your stuff. So if you're the Titans, if you really want to hold on to Corey Davis, I'd act fast because he's going to be a hot commodity this offseason. Young wide receiver hitting the market in the prime of his career. A lot of teams are going to be interested in him. Asan Moore says, what a beautiful win by the Colts. T.Y. Hilton is starting to settle in. Nyheim Hines and Jonathan Taylor are looking like two running backs to scare teams. Phillip Rivers is coming alive. Nyheim Hines is again, one of my favorite running backs. He's so versatile. He's a Swiss Army knife. Jonathan Taylor, he's been okay this year. I haven't really been overly impressed with what they've gotten from him. But again, this wasn't supposed to be the role he was supposed to be in. This was supposed to be the Marlon Mack show, starring Marlon Mack, co-starring Nyheim Hines, with guest appearances by Jonathan Taylor. That's how this show was supposed to go. And then you lose Marlon Mack in week 1, and now all of a sudden, it's the Jonathan Taylor show starring Jonathan Taylor, co-starring Nyheim Hines, and Jonathan Taylor wasn't ready to star in his own show. So now they're looking at Jordan Wilkins saying, hey, man, you might have to be the star of the show. You might have to be the co-lead, and we might have to give Nyheim Hines his own show. You might actually have to be the co-lead, and we go back to the original plan of having Jonathan Taylor be a supporting cast member. You know, a couple of guest appearances, like Brumman. You know, right now, he's kind of like playing a Tommy Cole, Pam, Gina role. That's really not what they signed up for when they drafted him right out of the gate. He was supposed to be, you know, having a Stan or a Brumman role. We'll see what happens. Jonathan, or Captain Spartan says, I hope I'm not wrong on Jonathan Taylor. Bro just can't seem to get it going. I'm waiting for him to break out, and it just ain't coming yet. Watch it be against my Steelers. I'm not souring on him. I still like him as a football player, and I think he's going to be just fine. Just fine. He's adjusting to the speed of the game. He's adjusting to everything. Again, I don't like first of all, if you're a Washington fan out there, you cringed when you saw some of those 3rd and 4th down runs from the Colts, because you know them all too well. It's that stinking ass duo play, you know, that dive, that quick hitter. Though that play almost never works. All it takes is for one guy to get beat, and that whole play is blown to smithereens. To me, it's one of the worst run plays in the league. I hate when teams run it, especially in short yardage situations. I can't stand to watch it. And anyway, Jonathan Taylor's going to be fine. I said all of that to say this. He's going to be just fine. Asan Moore says, do you think the Titans are struggling with their defense and can't stop anybody? Also, this game showed me two teams that are truly good. What about you? The Titans are struggling defensively. I wouldn't say they can't stop anybody. Like, they're not Seattle right now. You know, they're not out here giving up 41 every other week. But their defense is struggling. There's no doubt about that. Like, they're not terrible and to the point where they can't stop anybody. You've got to actually be potent offensively. And if you are, you can move the football against the Titans. You know, but the Bears are funky on offense, and they had nothing going against this Titans defense. So, you know, that kind of dispels any notion that they can't stop anybody. If you can't move the football consistently, then you won't move it against this Titans team. But if you can, you will. And that's where they are right now. And these are two good teams. You know, the records reflect that, and they've shown you throughout the course of the season with their body of work that they're two quality football teams, indeed. Captain Spartan 04 says, what do you think is wrong with the Colts O-line when it comes to running? I thought I heard they're 31st when it comes to yards per attempt on rushing. They are. They don't run for a ton of yards. And again, some of it is them. Some of it's the backs. There have been plenty of games this season where Jonathan Taylor has had, 21 carries for 68 yards. That'll kill your rush per average. Your rush average. It'll kill it dead. And it wasn't one, or like 3 or 4 games where you look up, he's 18 for 62. He's 21 for 68. But they're winning these games. Those are games when they're up and they're looking to salt away the clock and he's churning away. I think he's at 100-yard game, and if I'm not mistaken, that was the Minnesota Vikings game. And maybe that wasn't a 100-yard game. There haven't been many, big-time rushing performances this year for the Indianapolis Colts, but it's effective runs. And when they run, they're running to get, again, when you run duo, you're running to get 1 yard. So if they block it for 1 and you get 1 and all you needed was 1, you move the sticks. That's all they care about. We saw that tonight. How many times was it 3rd or 4th and 1 and they barely got 1? But if that's what you're blocking it up for and that's what you get, that's what you get. But it's successful because you move the sticks. That's all you care about. Give me 3 more downs. Give me a fresh set of downs to work with. So right now, I don't love the blocking scheme. So if you're asking me what I think is wrong, I don't love the block scheme. I hate duo. So, and all duo is a couple of double teams up front, and it's a quick hitter. And as I mentioned, all it takes is for one guy to miss his block, like on the penetration on one play. I want to say it was it the left tackle, Costanzo, or was it the guard on that side? I think it was the guard on that side, the left side. Got beat right off the snap. Penetration instantly. Stopped the play. Dead in its tracks. Assam Moore says, I think Washington has the talent. It is just that we do not know how to use it, and we do not know how to win close games. We still got a long way to go talent-wise. Long way to go talent-wise. But I think we've got more talent than we've had in Washington since 2016. Was the last time we had true talent, at least on one side of the ball. I think we were still lacking defensively, but, we had talent offensively then. Pierre and Deshaun and Jordan Reed and Trent Williams, Kirk Cousins. We had talent, in 2016. But, we might have even had Vernon Davis then as well. But, I don't know. We might have signed Vernon Davis in 17. But I think we're a lot closer to turning things around if we have a big offseason than some people think. But it starts by finding a quarterback. You got to find the right guy. Jonathan says, I will say Frank does deserve some blame as well, Louie. His play calling has been inconsistent at times. I can believe it. And he's over-aggressive, and that just comes from that Philadelphia Eagles mentality. Remember, he came from Philadelphia with Doug Peterson. And it's just that mentality of, analytics, go for it on 4th down. Like Doug Peterson is out of control with the amount of times he goes for it on 4th down. Frank Wright's the exact same way. To me, there's a time and place for everything. And some of his play calling, as you mentioned, hasn't been the best. I didn't love some of the play calls tonight on some 3rd and 4th down situations. I was like, really? That's the best you got? That's what you're going to do in this situation? So, it is what it is. Reese says the Titans are cooling off after a red-hot start. They absolutely are. But you could see this coming because even the games that they were winning close, and you were saying to yourself, they easily could have lost that game. Week 1, they could have easily lost that game. They should have won it going away if Steven Gostkowski doesn't miss as many kicks, but still, barely got away in that game. They should have lost to Minnesota. They shouldn't have won that game. They could have easily have lost to Jacksonville. Okay? You could argue they should have lost to Jacksonville. They should have lost to Houston. Like, as you're watching this season unfold, the only ass thrashing they handed out in those first 5 wins of the season, when they started 5-0, was the Buffalo game. Other than that, the other 4 wins, you could easily have made a case that they could have lost every single one of those games. So you saw this coming. It was only a matter of time before the luck ran out and they started ending up on the short end of some of these close games. Captain Spartan says, it seems like it ain't Frank's style of offense, but honestly, I think this offense could use some more explosion. T.Y. seems to just run short routes. I want to see 50-yard touchdowns. I mean, I think that eventually they're going to open it back up with T.Y. I think that eventually, this is the thing. In order to be able to stretch the football field vertically, you got to be able to run the football a little bit. And I think with them right now, the passing game is really working as an extension of the run game because they're not getting what they really want out of the run game. Even though, as I mentioned, when Nyheim Hines is in, the run game looks vastly different than when Wilkins or Taylor are in there. And so Nyheim Hines is he's picking and he's probing and he's making guys miss and he's using his speed to attack. And, next thing you know, what looked like a 2-yard run is a 7-yard run. And now you're in business. It just looks different when he carries the football. And they need that with this offense. They need that. Eventually, I think they're going to start getting some explosive plays. But that just hasn't been what they've been this season for whatever reason. I can't really explain it. Obviously, T.Y. hasn't really been healthy this season. And he had a rough start to the season. He had a couple of big drops against Jacksonville in week 1. And then, you're dealing with the groin and all the things he's dealt with this season. He hasn't been right. You were expecting to have, a bunch of speed with, you finally thought you were going to get the Ohio State wide receiver, Paris Campbell, healthy this year. He was banged up, I think week 2 or 3. He's been out since. So, they're back to doing what they have to do, which is methodically move the football down the field. Eventually, I think they're going to be able to push the football down the field. The one guy that's been able to create big plays for them this year has been Marcus Johnson. He's been the big play guy down the field, 40, 50 yards. But outside of that, really haven't had too many explosive plays. Cody _ says, he hasn't missed a kick, but he has missed an extra point this year. And he said this and last year he's been automatic. I don't remember if it was 2017 or 18 he had that fump. Yeah, and I don't remember which season it was, but I know Aaron Rodgers had to go to management, and it had to be a year Aaron Rodgers was healthy, so I think it was 17. I don't think it was 18 because I think Aaron Rodgers was out for most of 18. I think it was 17, but I could be wrong. Either way, I just remember he was struggling, and I know a lot of people, including myself, were saying, hey, man, I think it might be time to move on from Mason Crosby. And Aaron Rodgers vouched for him. They hung on to him, and the guy's been lights out. So, I think that's what Mike Vrabel was doing with Gostkowski. He said, look, this guy's got a track record. He's going to break out of this funk. Just give him some time. But at what point have you given him enough time? At some point, you have to say when. And friends know when to say when. I know that's your boy, but I think it's time to say when. And, I think about Indianapolis with Adam Vinatieri. Again, one of the most accurate kickers in NFL history. He was thinking it up. It becomes mental with these kickers. It becomes mental. I don't care how good you've been in your career. You start missing, and it starts becoming mental. Now you're trying to overcompensate for the miss last time. Well, I pushed it. So now I need to overcompensate. Now you hook it. Now you start playing mental tricks with yourself. So we'll see what they decide to do. I think it's about time to move on from Stephen Gostkowski. Captain Spartan says, just overall, that Colts offense doesn't scare me. If they get a quarterback that can move, I would then be scared. Jamie Newman in the draft or throw a bank at Dak, 4th most cap space next offseason. I get it. And it shouldn't scare you because they're not explosive. They're not explosive. But what they do is they play complementary football. If the defense is playing this well, all I'm asking them to do offensively is to not turn it over. They're good enough to get in the field goal range. Rodrigo Blankenship was struggling early in the season. He seems to have gotten his act together. They're good enough to do what it is they need to do. Like, I've seen them, and this is the thing I like about the Colts. I've seen them win a shootout versus the Bengals where they were down 21-0. and come back and win that game. I think they won that one 31-27. I've seen them win, slobber knockers on the road where they had to get in a fist fight with teams like Chicago. I think they won that game 18-10 or, 19-10 or 11. Like, when they have to get physical, gritty, nasty, and dirty, they can. But if they need to score like tonight, and I know it wasn't all offensive, the special teams chipped in, but I don't care. You get it how you get it. When they need to score, they can score. They put 41 up on Detroit last week. 34 this week. I know it isn't pretty all the time, but when you play the kind of defense they can play, all you need to do is take care of the football. And that's what they've done over the last 3 or 4 weeks. And that's why they've won the way they've won recently. So they don't have to scare you, but you should be very aware that this Colts team is very capable. Gregory Lightbody says, Colts are winning games with a mediocre offense and a good defense. Maybe that's all the Washington football team needs. The level of disrespect for the Colts offense, staggering. Because, again, you call it mediocre. Mediocre offenses don't score 41 points. I'm not saying, I'm just saying. They scored 34 tonight. They scored 31 a month ago against Cincinnati. Like, they're consistently scoring. It's not, again, there were some games earlier this season. I just brought up the Bears game. Didn't score a bunch of points. That Vikings game was not pretty. They forced a bunch of turnovers, and it wasn't pretty, but they scored points in that game. They're capable offensively. And they've got a very, very good quarterback when he's not turning it over, pulling the strings in Phillip Rivers. You don't have to be afraid of this offense, but you must respect it. To call it mediocre, I think is a little bit harsh. They're more than mediocre offensively. They're not just passengers in this vehicle this season. They're driving too. The defense, they're taking shifts, 3-4 hour shift. They get tired. The offense takes the wheel and they drive. Like, the defense isn't just driving this car nonstop. Ali Side says, damn, Lou, I need to get better at picking this division game. But I did not expect this game to be a blowout. The Colts defense is damn good. They just need a better quarterback. Again, the disrespect for Phillip Rivers. If he's not turning it over, and that's when I get frustrated with Phillip Rivers. And I think I was on my podcast, 3 weeks ago when they lost. I think they beat Cincinnati, then they lost the next week, if I'm not mistaken. And Phillip Rivers, no, they lost. So they lost to the Ravens last week, but they won against the Bengals, and then they beat the Lions, and then they lost, and then they won this week. So I think it was the game before the Bengals game, I think was a loss. Let me look at their schedule real quick. And I remember coming on the podcast and talking about how he's going to undo this team. And I was right. It was the Browns game. And I remember how frustrated, because I picked Indianapolis to win that game, and that's why I was so frustrated. He had 2 interceptions. I remember that game. He wasn't good in that game. And I thought it was his play that cost him that game. And I said, he's going to be the undoing of this team if he doesn't rectify the turnover problem. And he's been really good since then. Let's see. I want to check real quick to see, has he thrown an interception since that Cleveland game? Because I don't recall him throwing many interceptions since then. He did throw one against Cincinnati. I think that was early in that game that helped them jump out to the 21-0 lead in that game. Let's see if he threw another one. I don't think he threw one against the Lions, and he didn't. He didn't throw one last week against the Ravens. Yes, he did throw one last week. Okay, I stand corrected. He did throw one last week. I don't recall that one last week, but when he stays clean, and I want to go through their wins really quickly. When I want to see what happens when Phillip Rivers, what their record is when he doesn't throw an interception. I know he threw one in week 1 versus Jacksonville Jaguars. I know that for a fact. I remember that game. I remember him throwing 2 interceptions in that game. They lost that game. He did throw an interception versus the Vikings. So they're 1-1 in games he throws an interception. He doesn't throw one against the Jets. He doesn't throw one against the Bears, 19-11. I told you that was a funky score game. He threw 2 against the Browns, so they're 1-2 in games he throws interceptions. He threw an interception against the Bengals, but they won 2-2 in games he throws interceptions. And he threw one against the Ravens. They're 2-3 in games he throws interceptions. In games that he doesn't throw an interception, they are 4-0. So there you have it. Like, it's a direct correlation for me, at least. If he can limit the turnovers, and I get it, in the games that he didn't throw an interception, you played the Jets, the Bears, and if my memory serves me correct, he should have thrown a pick in that Bears game in the end zone. I was cussing him slam out. The linebacker, I want to say it was Roquan Smith that picked it off, but he was out of bounds. And I said, Phillip, what are you doing, dude? This is going to be a low-scoring game. If nothing else, you need to come away with a field goal here. And they ultimately got a field goal after the interception was overturned. He almost threw an interception in that game. I remember that one. Doesn't throw an interception against the Lions defense, and he didn't throw one tonight against the Titans. But when he doesn't throw an interception, they're undefeated. So, that tells you all you need to know. They're 2-3 when he does throw a pick. They're 4-0 when he doesn't. If he takes care of the football, they're dangerous. Captain Spartan says, I love that Colts defense. It ain't sexy, but it knows how to get the job done. I want my Steelers to find someone to compliment Bush like a Bobby Okereke compliments Darius Leonard. I love that selection when they made it of Okereke. I didn't quite know how they were going to use Okereke, but they figured it out, man, and he just gets it, this Bobby Okereke. King Sean 32 says, Lou, A.J. Brown can't catch a cold on that perfect deep ball pass Tannehill threw. A.J. Brown dropped the pass. Like, how do you drop that? He says Terry would have caught that deep ball, honestly. Well, Terry dropped one earlier this season from Dwayne. Shit happens. Now, this isn't the first time A.J. Brown has dropped a deep ball this season. He's had some big drops this season. He had one against Cincinnati when they lost a couple of weeks ago. He's got to catch the football. He's too good of a receiver to have these lapses where he's, making these types of mistakes. He's too good of a receiver, and they need him. He's their guy. And you got to have your guy making plays. So he's got to step up. Dank Funny says, can this Colts defense carry them to the playoffs? It's not a matter of can they carry them to the playoffs. It's can they do damage once they get there. This Colts team is going to the postseason. Again, the only way they don't make it to the postseason is if they unravel via 2 things: injuries and or Phillip Rivers turns the football over. If they steer clear of those things, they're going to be in the postseason. I picked them before the season started to win this division. I think I picked them to win this division. I might have picked Houston. I know I picked the Colts to make the playoffs. And I don't see any way that they don't make the playoffs as long as they continue to do the things that has gotten them to 6-3 to this point. Rafael DeLuna says, fun game to watch. Very physical play by the defenses. I concur. Captain Spartan says, yeah, Ballard is pretty good. Malik Hooker feels like his only noticeable miss so far, and that was his first draft, so that can be excused. And really, Malik Hooker dealt with a ton of injuries too. A lot of what you can say about Hooker really not working out is the fact he hasn't been able to stay healthy and really build any consistency with his play. But yeah, you're right. That's really one of the few misses that he's had in his career to this point as Colts general manager. Cody _ says, I'm pretty sure you talked about OG DCs on Overtime. I couldn't remember if it was the pod or on one of these Overtime shows. King Sean 32 says, I need that Titans D to apologize to me. I started their D in fantasy and they put up negative points. Shaking my head. Do you think their D was bad because of play calling? I think it's a combination of the two. But again, when you don't get after the quarterback, it's hard in this league. When you don't, even if you don't sack the quarterback, you need to harass the quarterback. He needs to feel uncomfortable. I think they almost sacked Rivers once. And I think he might have been pressured maybe once more, other than the time where he balled up in a fetal position because he's ready to get sacked. And he was like, oh, I'm not sacked. And then he threw it away. Outside of that, I don't know if there was too many other times where he was under heavy duress on a snap. He had pretty much all night to throw the football. And that's a problem for any team. I don't care how good you are defensively. Like, the Ravens don't have an elite pass rusher, but they scheme up pressure. Like, you got to find a way to impact a team's quarterback. If you can't generate it with a 4-man rush, then you got to send pressure. But you got to find a way to impact a quarterback. If you let NFL quarterbacks stand in the pocket, I don't care how average or mediocre you think a quarterback is, you give him time, he's going to find somebody. Eventually, he's going to find someone. It's like leaving an NBA shooter open. Even if that guy's shooting 30% from behind the three-point line, you leave him open, he can make the damn shot. He's an NBA shooter. Same thing with an NFL quarterback. You leave him enough time in the pocket, and it doesn't have to be the best quarterback in the league. You give him time, and he'll be able to find somebody open. King Sean says, Michael Pittman is a beast. Wish we could have drafted him. The Colts, if the Colts didn't draft him. Well, we didn't have a second-round pick. So you knew getting a guy like that was going to be tough sledding because most of those types of receivers, him, Denzel Mims, the Clemson receiver that's in Cincinnati, all of those guys are going to come off the board in the second round, and you knew that. And we didn't have a second-round pick. So Captain Spartan says, whatever happened to the guy that had no film on, EJ Speed? He has been doing good on the Colts. Also, Banagoo and Torrey are really good rotation guys. Houston and Chandler Jones just produces. So the EJ Speed guy was the one that blocked the punt tonight. And, remember, that was the guy that I watched, like, it was like you said, limited film. I could barely scrounge up film, but the stuff that I did see, I wasn't overly impressed. But he was the one that blocked the kick tonight, that went for the touchdown. Ben Banagoo, I remember when they selected him, I was like, I didn't like that pick. But I said, I trust Chris Ballard. So they'll have a role for him. And he's been solid for them. Kamiko Torrey, I just don't know if he'll ever be what I wanted him to be. The pass rusher out of Rutgers. But like you said, Justin Houston, there are guys that are professional pass rushers. They just know how to get to the quarterback. They know how to bag QBs, and he's one of them for sure. J Cam Man says another bad pigskin pick'em week. Well, I'm off to a great start because I saw this one coming a mile away. So I feel good about my start to the week. I've made a declaration, and I'm gonna talk about that on the pod tomorrow. I'm not going to hijack this show with that talk because I had a revelation last week about my picks, and I'm ready. I'm ready now. And this was the start of that. Ali Side says, I feel like the Colts are a bit too aggressive. If they take those 3 in the first half of this game, could have been over sooner. I mean, hindsight is 20/20. Again, my thing is risk over reward. Risk and reward. You have to weigh the two. If the risk is too great, and if you don't convert, and it hurts you more than just settling for the field goal, then I have a problem with it. And that's always been my problem with the Eagles and Doug Peterson, is that a lot of times when they go for 2 or they decide to go for it on 4th down, it's a risk-reward thing. And I'm like, you have a chance to get points, to Your defense is playing well. And if you don't convert this fourth down, not only are you going to put your defense in what amounts to a sudden change of possession situation, but you're also killing momentum. You're giving the other team great momentum here. Like, it's unnecessary. You don't have to do this. And a lot of times, it's plenty of time left in the game. So in my mind, I'm like, this just doesn't make any sense. But again, they have their rationale and their reasoning for the things that they do. When it works, you're a genius. When it doesn't, you get criticized. I criticize you when it works and when it doesn't work because I need to be consistent. I don't like it. You're going for fourth down too often. Got a super chat here from Matthew Stansberry. Thank you for the super chat, Matthew. Greatly appreciate you. Who writes, your knowledge of the league is always impressive. Thanks for your fair and honest assessments of all teams week to week. Keep up the great work. Thank you, Matthew. This is what I do. I eat, sleep, and breathe NFL football, all 32 teams. I don't know how to do it any other way. I talk about how much I love this sport, and I'm glad that you enjoy the content. Thank you so much, Matthew. And we've talked in the past, so I really do appreciate you. Let's see. Hassan Moore says, do you think if the Bills got another chance to play the Titans, they will beat them from the way the Titans are playing now? I honestly, and I said that on the podcast, that if the Titans and the Bills play again, the outcome wouldn't be the way that it was. Now, I can't guarantee you that the Bills would beat them, but I know it wouldn't be a beatdown like it was. I think it was 41-17. It wouldn't be that. I can assure you of that. That wouldn't happen again. The Bills were actually banged up in that game. And I get it. The Titans didn't have practice. And I just thought that the Bills were going to be the fresher team. And I thought because of the lack of practice that they were going to have the advantage. And it was the opposite way around in that game. But I do think that if those two teams played again, the Bills would be a little bit better than they were. A lot better than they were the last time those two teams met. Cody _ says, you got it backwards, Lou. 17 missed most of the season with a broken collarbone. 18 wasn't healthy but played most of the year. Okay, so 18 was the week 1 ankle injury versus the Bears. And he tried to gut it out, and he was never right. Was it ankle, knee? I think it was. I know it was the Bears week 1, I think it was. He got injured in that game. He was never right the whole season. Okay, 17 was the broke. Was 17 the comeback in like week 16 versus the Panthers to try to give you a lift? And he was horrible in that game, and then they were like, okay, we're done. Was that 17? Or am I getting some of these? Because he's been hurt a couple of times, like in a little stretch there. It was a little pocket where he was banged up like 3 or 4 years, in 3 or 4 times in like a 5-year stretch. Some of those years kind of bleed together for me. But I know it was a game at the end of the season that he comes back for against the Panthers. And he didn't play very well, and they ultimately lose that game. And I think they realized, okay, the season's done. Then I feel like it was another season where he came back week 17 versus the Bears. It could be the same season. I could be mixing stuff up. Again, they all start to kind of bleed together after a while. Ali Side says, Lou, I know Phillip is a gamer, but can he take them to the Super Bowl? I watched this guy light us up twice every single year. When Phillip is dialed in, and again, it's never been a question of Phillip Rivers' talent. It's always been about his ability to take care of the football. Ask any Chargers fans, they will tell you Phillip Rivers can carry a team. When he gets hot and he gets in a rhythm, I watched him do it for years in San Diego / Los Angeles with the Chargers. But he can also throw you out of a game just as quickly as he can throw you into one. So that's the thing. And I think they are trying to have a good balance of not putting him in those positions and also saying, Phillip, go be yourself. Go do what you do. But at the same time, scale it back a bit because this defense is too good for us to put them in compromising situations. Cody _ says knee. Yeah, it was 17 when versus the Panthers. I think it was like week 12 or 13. I thought he came back at some point, end of the season, 12 weeks 13, 14, 15, somewhere in that window. It wasn't 16. It wasn't that late. It was like 12. It was like 13, 14, somewhere in there, 15. I think 15's a little late. 13 or 14, somewhere in there, where he comes back. And I'm like, oh, here comes Rodgers. Here comes the savior. And he stunk it up. And I was like, okay, no, this isn't going to work. So anyway, we've hit our hour mark. I've ran through all of the comments. And this was a fun game. And it's that much more enjoyable when I'm on the right side of it. I knew what I had seen coming into this game. I knew the Colts were the right side. I knew the Colts were going to win this football game. Because I watched the Titans play the Bears last week. Not impressed. And the Bears can't score. And that was a close ball game for much of the game. And the only thing that I didn't expect tonight that I got was Derrick Henry rushing as effectively as he did. I watched the Bears shut down Derrick Henry last week. And I said, I expect the Colts to be able to do the same thing. And if the Colts can do the same thing to him, they're going to win the football game, because that's essentially the Titans' offense. If Derrick Henry doesn't get going, you're going to be able to, you cut the head off and the body will die. And essentially, I watched the Bears do that last week, but they just didn't have enough offense. And then you fumble the football and they scoop it up and score it. You're not going to win. You already struggle to score, and you want to turn it over and have that directly lead to points. You're asking to lose. That's the one thing I didn't account for, was Derrick Henry having success on the ground. He did, but they were able to overcome that by essentially just not giving the Titans many opportunities to possess the football. They dominated time of possession, and for a while there, I was a little nervous because they kept not getting in the end zone. Whether they were settling for a field goal or they got stopped at the 1 yard line. I'm like, this is going to catch up to you. If you lose this game, we're going to talk about these missed opportunities to get in the end zone, but eventually, the defense continued to get stops. The special teams jumped in. The offense started to pick it up, and next thing you know, it's 34-17, and the Colts are walking away a winner with a share of first place in the AFC South. So that's going to do it for me, your man Louie T. I thank you guys for joining me on tonight's show. This is going to be a fun division to watch the rest of the way. I think obviously it's a 2-team race, and I really think the Colts have what it takes to win this division, but got to take care of the football. If they can do that, you saw it tonight. The defense is good enough. The special teams is good enough. The offense is good enough. Just got to take care of the football. If they do that, they're going to be a dangerous team. For the Titans, it's simple. It really is. You want to be better defensively, but for me, if you want to help this defense out, the best way to do that is to jump on teams and run the football, control time of possession with Derrick Henry in the run game, and keep the defense off the field. To me, that's the blueprint for the Titans moving forward. A.J. Brown, got to catch the football. He catches that football. This is a totally different football game. One that the Titans may be able to control a little bit better because they're up early. He drops that football. I thought the game was never the same. That's going to do it for me, your man Louie T. I'm about to get out of here. I think I've said that 19 times already, but I mean it this time. I thank you guys for joining me. If you haven't already done so, what are you waiting on? Subscribe to the Louie T Network for more great content. Go ahead, hit that notification bell so you don't miss a thing. Go ahead and hit that like button and help me, your man Louie T, out on your way out. And also, get you some merch. Louie T Network merch. I got a hat on. This one is actually not for sale. This is a exclusive right here. This is a all-weather hat right here. It's a dry fit hat. So this is good in all weather right here. But you can get you a black Louie T Network hat. You can get you a camo. You can get you a beanie in black or gray. You can get a hoodie in black or gray. You can get a shirt in black, gray, or white. I mean, help your man out. And look good doing it too, man. I got a picture. I told you guys this on my last stream. I got a picture from somebody that bought some merch. And I told you, if you buy some merch, send me a picture of you rocking the merch, man. And he sent me the picture, and he looked dope. He had on the camo hat. I was like, man, you doing the damn thing. So go ahead, cop some merch. And if you do, send me a picture of you rocking the merch, man. I really appreciate it. I'm going to put together a little collage with all of y'all rocking the merch, man. So I really appreciate you guys. But until next time, I'm your man, Louie T, signing off. I'll be live tomorrow for the Louie T Network podcast, episode 112. I'll have my week 10 picks coming at you and some Thursday night leftovers from this game. And we'll talk about the National Football League in all of its splendor tomorrow on the pod. Until then, you guys take care. Have a good one. LouieTeeNetwork.